Ladies and gentlemen, it's December 15th. This is at 5 p.m. This is the Carson City Planning Commission regularly scheduled meeting for December. Call the roll, please.
Chair Borders,
Present.
Commissioner Eswine, Commissioner Perry,
Present.
Commissioner Preston, Commissioner Tingle,
Present.
Commissioner Wiggins. A quorum's present.
Thank you. Commissioner Eswine, would you lead us in the pledge, please? The public is invited at this time to comment on and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Planning Commission, including any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. Is there any public comment at this time?
I see no public comment, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on is the approval of the minutes of November 17th, 2020. That's our regularly scheduled November meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, could I have a motion to accept the minutes of November 17th, 2020? All right. It's moved by Commissioner Tingle and seconded by Commissioner Eswine to approve those minutes. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. I'm sorry, Mr. Wiggins abstains, he was absent. The next is the approval of the workshop minutes of December 7th, 2020. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, may I have a motion for approval? Commissioner Eswine moves approval. Is there a second? Commissioner Tingle seconds. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Any abstentions? I guess Commissioner Preston, did you abstain? Yeah, okay, thank you. Modification of the agenda. Items on the agenda may be taken out of order. The public body may combine two or more agenda items for consideration, and the public body may remove an item from the agenda or delay discussion relative to an item on the agenda at any time. Mr. Palmer, is there any changes or modifications that you have to the agenda?
No modifications. We'll take the agenda in order. I will just note for the record that E2, you'll take it up. There's a request for continuance to the next meeting, though. So for anybody watching, they're not going to consider and take action on that tonight.
Okay.
Other than to continue it.
Item E1, LU 2020-0045, discussion and possible action regarding a request for a special use permit to allow alternative compliance to the downtown mixed use standards, specifically standards relating to the mixed use requirement, a community amenities requirement, the sidewalk specification, and the building envelope setback requirements relative to a multifamily residential development on property zoned downtown mixed use DTMU located at 906 South Stewart Street, APN 004-055-02 and -07. Hope?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant is proposing to construct a 253-unit apartment building on a 3.44-acre parcel, or two parcels actually, located at the southwest corner of South Store and East 9th Street. The subject properties are zoned downtown mixed use. In this property, I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback. I'll try to push the mic back. Sorry. Okay, in general, the applicant is proposing, I have elevations up on the board, a 5-story, 72-foot tall apartment building. The maximum number of units will be 253, although this may be reduced by 5 units depending on how drainage is handled. The unit mix is proposed to be 21 studios, 138 one-bedrooms, and 94 two-bedroom units. The project includes a 6-story parking structure, and I have the site plan up right now, that is wrapped by the residential building and will accommodate 427 parking spaces. The multifamily apartments are an allowed use, so the use of this land is not before the commission. Because it's in the downtown mixed-use zoning district, it must comply with the development standards in Division 6. Per Municipal Code 1807-025, the applicant may seek a special use permit to utilize alternative compliance. In those cases, the applicant or the special use permit must meet the 7 required findings plus 3 additional findings for approval. Specifically, what the applicant is requesting is deviation from 6.5.3, which addresses mixture of uses. Since the site is more than 50,000 square feet, it should include one use from the commercial, service, or retail use group. It's also seeking deviation from 6.6.4.3, which addresses outdoor gathering spaces and community amenities. Given the size of this property, 5 amenities are required and at least 2 are proposed. It's seeking deviation from 6.6.7.3, which addresses streetscapes. As Stewart Street is a commercial corridor as opposed to a residential street, a 15-foot wide sidewalk with street trees is required. The applicant is proposing a minimum of 8-foot wide sidewalks with a planter or patio between the building and the sidewalk. And lastly, the applicant is seeking to deviate from 6.7 the street envelope standards, which essentially says after 3 stories, the building should step back 25 feet along Stewart Street. The applicant is proposing no step back. Staff has gone through the findings in the staff report, including the supplemental findings. Rather than speaking specifically to each of the findings, I'll speak generally to each of the requests. In general, what you will see, and in fact, I'm going to show you the same slide 3 different times as we go through this request, is to a large extent, my comments are based on the location of this site. What I have up on the board is the map of the downtown mixed-use zoning district. What you'll see is this particular site is in the southeast corner of the district along Stewart Street. The blue dashed line shows the boundaries of the downtown mixed-use district. So what you'll see is as you travel north, we're no longer in the district where the state buildings are. And then as you get north of Musser, both sides of Stewart Street are in the district. So I will be referring to the location. In terms of the mixed use requirement and the request by the applicant to be entirely residential, Goal 5.6 of our master plan is to promote a downtown revitalization. This site, as shown on the picture in front of you, is right next door to the mall, and I hope you had a chance to go out there. It's also right across the street from one of the largest office buildings in the city, the Bryant Building, which is state offices. In staff's opinion, this is an activity node absent this project. The one thing missing from the activity node is the residential component of this project. Staff feels like this use would provide customers to the mall and convenient housing for state workers. Given the particular location of the activity node that currently lacks the residential use, staff is able to make all the required findings, including the supplemental findings, for making the site exclusively residential, as it will put people near businesses and jobs, resulting in a more vibrant downtown. In terms of the public amenities, the public amenities include public plazas, but it also includes public art. The public amenities are part of creating an inviting, pedestrian-friendly environment. Much like the Jackson's parking lot that you had a number of months ago, this too is a gateway into our downtown. So just as with Jackson's, we worked with them to have a sculpture put up as part of that gateway. I feel like the applicant should include public art amenities at this site since it is the gateway. The applicant is proposing a sculpture at the entrance in glass fiber reinforced concrete wall art, although the specificity of that wall art has not been provided. They have shown samples of what it could be in an inspiration section of the application. Staff understands that there's a desire to not have public plazas if the project is entirely residential, but staff finds that the addition of the public art would not compromise the private nature of this development and feels it would be appropriate as this is a gateway property. So staff is not supportive of not meeting the requirement for public amenities. In terms of the streetscape, again, this property is at the edge of the downtown mixed use. It connects to a mall sidewalk, and we have a picture of the mall sidewalk here. The mall sidewalk is 4.5 feet wide. Going to the north of the site, you have the state buildings on the west side of Stuart, which are excluded from the downtown mixed use. So if we go back to the picture, what you'll see is there will be a gap in the streetscape on Stuart Street. Additionally, traveling south, you're connecting to a 4.5-foot wide driveway, which when we look at this site, you can see the linear footage that the mall has along South Stuart Street. So the applicant is proposing an 8-foot minimum 8-foot sidewalk. It will be wider in sections along Stuart and is proposing planters and patios in between the building and the sidewalk. Given the limited opportunity for a streetscape on this section of Stuart, staff is supportive of the alternative design. In terms of the step back, here's a picture of the code section that says that after 3 stories, it steps back 25 feet. Again, we look at what the surroundings are. Typically, when you have a step back of a building, the idea is to allow light and air down so that it's not this sort of tunnel feel with no light, and you're surrounded by tall buildings. The subject property is at the edge of the downtown mixed use. Across the street, you have the office building that has a rather decent-sized parking lot in front of it. That office building is set back, as you can see. So I really don't believe you're going to have this tunnel effect that you would have when you have tall buildings on either side of a road, particularly given that the east side of Stuart Street is not in the downtown mixed use. So I don't believe the lack of a step back will compromise light and air, and I have made the findings in the affirmative for this part of the request. Louis Carriola from Manhart Consulting is on the line with his team and ready to make a presentation, and I'm happy to answer questions. I was brief, but I'm happy to go in depth on anything. Thank you.
Any questions for staff? Okay. How about the applicant?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Louis Carriola from Manhart Consulting. I'm joined today here on the video as a panelist by project engineer Stuart Fellows and planning manager Chris Baker. Additionally, I believe call-in members of the team for this project include Randy Johnson of Pillar Income Asset Management, the applicant, architect Rodney Wizenbach from Perlman Architects, and Lauren Chilson from Headway Transportation. Finally, I believe Dan Birchfield, engineering manager for the project from Manhart, is also available to call in. Regarding a presentation, I believe I need permission to share a screen, and I'm not seeing that button active now. I'm not sure if who can allow me that permission.
Give me a second, Luis.
While we're doing that, Mr. Carriola, have you read the 16 conditions of approval?
We have read the conditions, yes.
Are they acceptable as they stand?
They are acceptable, including Ms. Sullivan's request for additional art exhibits as part of the final design. So yes.
Okay.
So it looks like I can share at this point. I'm going to walk through this process. Please let me know when. Okay. What's happening? Okay, there we go. Please let me know when you can see my screen.
We've got it.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe Ms. Sullivan has covered most of the details of the project, so I'm not sure I have a lot to add regarding the actual development plan, the land use and zoning already discussed, and I appreciate Hope's analysis regarding the urban character district where the site is located and how that plays into recommended approval of the special use permits. I did want to maybe take advantage of this slide here. Obviously, you've seen the entrance and the proposed sculpture and some of the artwork proposed in the public plaza. I've added here some of the intended materials. Only the gray stucco is depicted. Obviously, there'll be some lighter colors as in addition to the brick veneer and some of the siding choices. Again, these are conceptual. There is an expectation that final design will be reviewed by staff for approval. Additionally, some of the screening materials are intended to have, in this case, as you see in the lower right of the slide, some vegetation depicted. In other words, the screening materials will also function as some of the public art, recognizing that those would be at the pedestrian level. Again, some of these elevations were already included in Hope's presentation, so I'm not sure there's anything new here, other than to give some sense of the articulation proposed.
Back on that slide you just went by.
Yes, this one?
No, keep going. The northwest view. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yes, the northwest elevation. Yes, sir.
Is that a meeting room or what is that on the 6th floor?
Okay, thank you for that question. There's a proposed sky lounge proposed as one of the amenities for the residents. So this is a pretty great feature. It's going to be facing west towards the Sierras, and I believe the square footage is about 7,600 square feet. And we can, if I move forward in the slide, you'll see some of the other details. But that would be on the northwest of the roof level of the entire building above the parking garage. And if we move forward here, I can show you. So that would, if you can see my cursor here, the right side of this slide depicts the roof elevation, and you'll see that sky lounge along with a terrace. So, this is a little bit above and beyond from the applicant and the architect. The intent being that, this is going to be an appealing housing development for urban residents, yes, maybe state office building workers, but potentially other people moving to the area and ready to make a commute. This sky lounge will be complemented. I'm going to move back a couple slides here by the proposed clubhouse. This clubhouse is going to be 2 stories. You'll see it depicted here in the second floor plan as well, second story floor plan, and will include amenities such as gyms, locker rooms, a game room simulator, a coffee lounge. So this is going to be a nice, modern, new building for Carson City. This is the project summary. It is included in your packet. And then does kind of break down some of the items we touched upon, including here that resident clubhouse at 2 stories with the 6,800 square feet. I don't really have much more to add other than maybe some reference here to the art inspiration exhibit provided by Perlman Architects, and that's in your packet. Hope alluded to these glass fiber reinforced concrete wall panels. You'll see an example on the top left of this slide. And then again, some examples of privacy walls and planter boxes in downtown Reno. The intent is to introduce a consistent theme with downtown Reno's existing downtown Carson City. I'm so sorry. Downtown Carson City's
all right.
existing architecture.
Reno would never approve it.
I'm so sorry. You are correct. They don't have the right sense of style that Carson City does. So I think that's going to conclude my portion of the presentation. And of course, I am available for questions, as is everyone else on the team. Thank you.
Questions?
I have a question. This is Commissioner Tingle, where is the main ingress and egress points to this parking garage apartment complex? Where do they come off of?
Thank you, Commissioner Tingle, for that question. There are two primary entrances into the parking garage. The first being located on Stewart Street. You'll see it here. You can see my cursor on the northeast side of the building. So that's recognized as the main entrance. The secondary entrance is on the west side, accessing 9th Street to the north.
Okay, so that's across the street, I believe, from Sierra Lebone, that little strip mall thing. And then I understand the traffic study has been done, but that's always a bone of contention for me, is that the traffic studies don't necessarily indicate the impact on, and Stewart Street's a busy street, especially at between 7 and 8 in the morning, 4 and 5 in the afternoon. Granted, right now, because of COVID, there's not that much because folks are working from home, but that's a pretty busy 4-lane stretch of road. And so you're adding another 253 units, assuming 2 cars per unit, that's over 500 vehicles. So, like I said, traffic studies have always been a little issue for me, but just my issue.
Hope?
Mr. Chair, if I can just point the commission's attention to, in the application on page 11, is the first floor plan, which shows the driveways. And you can see the primary driveway off Stewart. I just want to point out the driveway on 9th it's more across the street from that hotel. Sierra Lebone is closer to Stewart Street. So this is this is not across from Sierra Lebone. Also, as Commissioner Tingle just brought up and is in the staff report, because of the conditions we're dealing with right now, with a lack of people, state workers are not going to work. We've had construction on Carson Street. There is a condition of approval that they update the traffic report to look at the warrant study for Lil Lane and Stewart. And if it is warranted to have signalization there, that in lieu of making a payment, a pro rata share payment towards those improvements, that they incorporate improvements in their construction plans. But staff recognizes that the data wasn't available because of current conditions and has requested that prior to issuance of any construction permits, we receive those updated reports in hopes that we can capture actual numbers as opposed to something that's artificially low. If we can't capture actual numbers because people aren't back at work, then they would use historical data and the methodology would be consistent with what the city's traffic engineer has approved. So we are doing everything we can to look out for traffic given the situation we have. And we do recognize that the intersection of Little Lane and Stewart may be something that needs to be signalized. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ooh, I better back away from that a little, huh? It's muffled. Maybe a little more. I have several questions here, some for the applicant and some probably relevant to the city. So I'll start with the first one. On this piece of property now, there's overhead power lines on two sides, but one that cuts right through the middle of it. I'm assuming that those are going to get relocated in this project. That's an applicant question.
Yes, this is Spencer Fellows from Manhard. Yes, they would be relocated underground.
Okay. And they'd be buried?
Correct.
Okay. Second question. What happens to the existing trees that are on the edge of the lot on the west side in between Reds 395 and the meeting hall there? It looks like that's probably going to be your ingress and egress area, but there's at least one big 100-year-old cottonwood there.
This is Louis Carriola from Manhard. I'm not sure we've gotten to that level of detail with staff regarding preservation of trees. I'm not exactly clear I understood your question. Are we talking about a tree that is on site or just off of site?
No, there are several trees that are fairly old that are on your site on the west side. I was just curious because we like to maintain and hold on to those trees here in town, but just a question and perhaps one you haven't thought about yet, but are worthy of thinking about as you do your final layout.
Right,
Mr.
of
Chair,
course.
if I may, I did see those trees on site, and the staff is aware those trees are there, and the staff has not incorporated any recommendations for tree protection or tree preservation as part of this project.
Okay. Third question. Is any of the area of this lot currently used to fulfill parking space requirements for the Carson Mall? And the only reason I ask that is because when I walk the perimeter of it, on the southeast side, the fence indents there, and there's a sign that says parking only for Carson Mall.
Louis Carriola, Manhard. I can answer that question for you, Commissioner Perry. There is an easement for the Carson Mall, a parking easement. So that is not an area proposed for disturbance in the project. In the final plans will include a continuation of that parking easement. So it's not proposed for construction or demolition or any change to that area.
So it wouldn't affect the parking that has been required when Carson Mall was being developed. I guess that was my only concern. They still have enough to meet their original requirements. Is that correct, City?
Correct. The actual project area does not include that parking lot.
Okay, thank you. Fourth question. And this is really for city staff. Is there a downtown redevelopment committee architectural review required on this since it's in the downtown mixed use zone? Or is this outside of that envelope? I was just curious if that was part of it since I'm not familiar with the redevelopment committee requirements.
Yeah, Lee Plamo, Community Development Director. There's no redevelopment design standards. I was going to say the downtown development standards contain the design standards that are part of the consideration of this application.
Okay, so that's not a step that has to happen here.
It's not another step that has to happen.
Okay, and my fifth one, really, and perhaps you at Manhard are familiar with this. Carson City has a growth management plan. And several meetings ago, we approved that. We approve it on an annual basis for how many residential hookups there can be. And for 2021, we approved 672 residential building permit entitlements. So are you familiar with how Carson City works in that context?
Louis Carriola from Manhard. The conditions of approval do require us to meet all of the city's codes. I don't know that I've read anything in the staff report. Perhaps Director Plemmel has some insight, not to move off this answer. Maybe I'll mute here for a moment and see if he can help me.
I was really, Director Plemmel, wondering, and question of the applicant, what year is this going to fall in? Is this going to be, I'd like to get an idea, is this going to be on the docket next year? You're going to pull the permits for this? Because that's about a third of our residential permits for the year.
Again, Louis Carriola, the special use permit expires within 1 year. I believe there's an opportunity for a 1-year extension. So the intent would be, as far as I know from the applicant, is to move forward with site improvement plans and position ourselves to be submitting within the time frame that this special use permit will be valid. So, COVID in particular has made some of these plans difficult, but the special use permit itself has a timeline.
Thank you. That answered my
It's in the
question.
conditions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, this is an apartment complex and not a subdivision of land. With subdivisions of land, we have a standard statement that goes on the map that acknowledges the city's growth management ordinance. This would also be subject to the city's growth management ordinance. I have not flagged it for the applicant because with the exception of the year we had Carson Hills Apartments and they pulled all their permits in a single year and that was 360. We have not gotten close to our maximums. And just to give you context, I checked yesterday where we were on residential housing starts for the year, and we're at about 160. So well below the maximum. I think your point's a good one, and this will be subject to the city's growth management. And I'm glad you brought that up, and I'll follow up with the applicant to make sure he understands. And it will be subject to it, but I have not underscored that just because except for Carson Hills, we just have not even come close.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Preston?
Hi. Good God. Okay. I have a question for you in regards to the south part of the parking lot that is not on your project site. And again, that has to do with the Capitol Mall site. The reason is that if I hadn't been in a meeting today that actually addressed the off-site parking agreement between Carrington and Reds, it wouldn't even be coming to my attention. But I want to make sure that that is not going to be hampered because I do have experience in construction, and where this is a plan that is actually going to start and go up to 5 levels plus a parking garage, there does not seem to be a site for staging. So my question is where is this staging going to occur?
Are you still there?
Oh, sorry about that. Louis Carriel, Manhard Consulting. I'm not sure if we can get some assistance from either Rodney or Randy. That would be the architect and the applicant. You know, as far as our submittal, we did not get to that point. I mean, we're submitting for a use permit. The expectation is that we would have to meet all Carson City requirements for a building permit, including appropriate staging. So I'm going to mute myself here now. I'm not sure how the protocol is for the other attendees who have called in. So I'm going to mute for a moment here.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rodney Wissenbach. I'm with Perlman Architects. Generally, in my experience, I'm an architect, not a contractor, but I do have a little bit of contracting experience. And these things are generally built in 2 portions. So you stage in one and the other, and because it's a garage, you would build the garage and then you could build the wrap. Unfortunately, that's the only knowledge I would have on that. We would rely on a contractor to develop a staging plan in concert with any city requirements.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Commissioner Preston, is the concern that at the time they stage, they may compromise access easements? And so perhaps a condition of approval to the effect of prior to issuance of construction permit, the applicant shall provide a detailed staging plan, including employee parking areas to the staff, and as part of that staging plan, demonstrate that none of the staging will compromise any existing access easements.
I think that would be satisfactory because we do have the urgent care there. The current Flavors of India is not occupied. The two buildings in front of Reds are in the process of getting occupied, and you have Reds. And that right there is a large area that requires on cross-parking and cross-parking agreements that have been made between the two buildings in the front, Reds, with the Flavors of India, and also Carrington's. So we would like to have those honored, please. And I'm sorry, I don't usually have to wear that other hat, but that's another hat. So sorry.
Is there any other questions from staff or from the commission to the applicant? Okay. Thank you for your presentation. Let's bring it back and let's see where we are. Mr. Estwine, you're dying to say something. I can see it.
Well, it's not that I'm dying to say anything, but I have to say that I have a hard time finding that this project complies with the conditions of approval 1, 2, 3, and 5, and specifically. This project is going to encompass 4 traditional city blocks in Carson City. Condition or finding 1 says that it will enhance the downtown. I think that a block of buildings that's 4 city blocks large is not going to enhance the character of the downtown. I think the structure is way too large, especially without the step backs that are required by condition of approval 5, or the finding number 5, the required finding number 5. I think that the step back should be required to present less of an imposing structure for pedestrians that will be walking along Stewart Street. And I also think that street trees and a 15-foot sidewalk are appropriate at this site. This is a 35-mile-an-hour, Stewart Street is a 35-mile-an-hour road. By providing street trees, you provide an adequate buffer for the pleasure and safety of pedestrians. And with the 15-foot sidewalk, you provide adequate room to provide both the street trees and pedestrian safety. I also think that to allow the deviation from the requirements of the code, that you're not going to encourage adjacent property owners to meet streetscape requirements if in any future development. I don't have a problem though with this being a residential only use. I think that to get an adequate downtown commercial infrastructure, we need to have residential downtown. And I think this type of project, if it were not so large, would be a perfect addition. And I think that, with the 117 extra parking stalls that they're proposing, I think there's probably adequate room on this site to move the building back to allow for sidewalks and street trees.
Okay. Anyone else? I tend to agree with you, but I'm not sure how you implement that. before we continue, if we add this 17th condition for a staging plan, Mr. Carriola, is that going to be acceptable to you?
Yes, that is acceptable.
Okay. What about the sidewalks?
So just a comment on the sidewalks, the 8 feet on Stewart Street is a minimum. The width will vary from over 16 feet to 8 feet, 8 feet where there are planters extending from the building. And as Ms. Sullivan alluded to, this is an all residential project, and the downtown mixed use standards for wide sidewalks are contemplating outdoor dining, outdoor display space for potential commercial uses. So the varying sidewalk here, again, between over 16 feet and 8 feet, gives space for landscaping, for art, and a more interesting pedestrian experience along Stewart Street. So I think it's important to note that it's not just an 8-foot sidewalk. It does move back and forth. Just to illustrate, I'm going to quickly share here my screen. And if you can see the cursor here, the northeast corner of the sidewalk there is over 16 feet, as are some of these other indentations that don't have planter boxes. So I did want to point out that distinction. I don't know that there's a way to change the design at this stage for a consistent 15-foot wide sidewalk.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments, questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair,
Yes,
Commissioner
Mr.
Perry. I'm in general supportive of this, simply because this part of town, which was an old lumber yard, is vacant with trucks and various things being stored on it, and has a fence that goes down that's about 10 foot high with tumbleweeds. And I would much rather see this development here. I understand Commissioner Eswine's concerned about the sidewalk widths and the setback on it. But I would suspect that economically, with 3.3 acres to build something like this, that would probably impact it significantly. I see on the south side where it's yet undecided as to whether or not this is going to be a drainage infiltration area. I see trees on that area there. But let me ask Louis is that what I'm looking at here? I'm looking at the landscape plan, and I'm looking at little circles there, and I think I read in here that it's undecided whether that section there will be a drainage infiltration area or whether there will be units built on it. Is that correct?
Louis Carriola, that is correct, Commissioner Perry. The stormwater retention is still under investigation. The soils need further modeling and study. So if the building is cantilevered over that area, there would be landscaping and screening. Yes.
Thank you. And I realize there's some additional planning, and what the applicant's looking at here is, can I move forward at least with knowing that some of these things are within the realm of possibility and approval with the city? This number of units in this part of town, I think, would alleviate a huge issue with regards to housing for a lot of the folks. The building across the street, the Bryant Building, houses some 450 people who are driving in, and I'd love to see some of them, living here and working there, and maybe revitalize the mall to the south of there also. So I think we've been waiting for something like this downtown to get some better residential housing to pull people into the downtown mixed use area, and I think this fits that fairly well. That's my view of the project. Thanks.
Are there any other comments? Yes, ma'am.
Terry
Commissioner
Preston for the record. I have another question on the site plan. It appears that to the south, that you have a 26-foot fire lane that appears to be in that easement that I'm speaking about. And so that is a concern. Because right now you can see that it's actually from your aerial, it shows parking. And in order to access the west side of the building in that fire lane, that would have to be vacated. So I am concerned about that, about current easement agreements that are on site that are not being addressed in this plan.
Hope, is there a requirement for?
This is Louis. This is Louis Carriola again. I would like to point out that the fire access is a requirement of condition, so an easement will have to be in place. But currently, I think it's important to note that the property to the south and the subject properties are commonly owned. So, there will be not only a mechanism in place to be perhaps restriping parking, but it's already understood that this project will have some effect on a limited number of stalls in that parking lot.
Hope, my question was whether or not that fire lane down there is a requirement of the fire department.
My understanding is it is a requirement. This is considered a high-rise by the fire department, and their truck needs to get access around the building.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions, Commissioner Tinkle?
I understand the desire to bring folks into the community, but depending on the cost of the unit, that's going to determine who's going to be able to afford to live there. So once again, affordable housing rears its ugly head here, but depending on the cost of the units, the monthly rental of the units, that's going to make a huge determination on who's going to be able to live there and whether or not they're going to be working across the street at the Bryan Building. So, because nothing is indicated about any monthly rental fees or anything like that, I'm not sure whether this is going to be considered affordable housing or not. So that's just my 2 cents.
Okay. Any other comments? We try a motion? Commissioner Perry?
Yes, I will make a motion. I think that before I start that motion, that the language that Commissioner Preston had, that Hope mentioned, could be included. So as I make this motion, I'm going to ask you to finish the motion, Hope. Okay? Okay. I move to approve LU 2020-0045 based on the findings and subject to the conditions of approval contained in the staff report, with one additional condition.
The additional condition will read, a detailed staging plan shall be included as part of the construction plans. The staging plan shall demonstrate that the staging will not compromise any access easements.
Okay.
End of motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
That was Commissioner Wiggins. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? No. One no, okay. Motion carries. Thank you guys for your presentation.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Could we take
Thank you,
a
Mr. Commissioner.
5-minute recess so we can fix the feedback issue we're having?
Certainly. Okay. We will adjourn for 5 minutes. See if we can. It's, 5:53 and we're back in session with hopefully our microphones are fixed. Item E2, discussion and possible action regarding a zoning map amendment to change the zoning from general commercial, discussion and possible action regarding a request for a special use permit to allow for the expansion of the Eagle Valley Middle School on property zoned P Public located at 4151 East 5th Street, APN 0100357. And we have been asked to continue that. So I would like to make a motion to continue this item to the Planning Commission meeting of January 27th, 2021. Is there a second? Commissioner Eswine seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Now let's try discussion and possible action regarding a zoning map amendment to change the zoning from general commercial to limited industrial on property located at 900 Mallory Way, APN 009-551-03. Heather?
Thank you. Heather Ferris, Associate Planner for the record. The subject property is approximately 3 acres in size and is located on the north side of Mallory Way, immediately south of Governor's Field. The site is developed with a warehouse and office building approximately 32,000 square feet in size. In 2011, the zoning for this parcel, as well as 2 parcels on the south side of Mallory Way, was changed from limited industrial to general commercial in order to accommodate the Silver State Charter School. Special use permit was also approved at that time to allow for the operation of a school on the subject parcel and the 2 on the south side of Mallory as well. The school operated at this site until 2018 when it closed. The current owner of the subject property leases the space for light industrial and warehouse uses and is now seeking a zoning map amendment from general commercial to the original limited industrial zoning district, which more closely represents the current uses. The master plan designation of the subject parcel is mixed-use commercial. Both the current zoning designation of general commercial and the proposed zoning of limited industrial are consistent with the mixed-use commercial master plan designation. The Board of Supervisors is authorized to approve a zoning map amendment after receiving a recommendation from the Planning Commission. There are 3 findings of fact that must be made in the affirmative in order for the Planning Commission to forward a recommendation of approval onto the board. Those include consistency with the master plan, compatibility with existing adjacent land uses, and no negative impacts on existing or planned public services or facilities. Staff was able to make all findings in the affirmative and is recommending the Planning Commission forward a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. I've kept this short, but I'm happy to go in depth in anything you might have questions on. Chris Baker with Manhard Consulting should also be on the line, and he's representing the applicant.
Are there any questions for staff?
I just had one, Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Perry?
Were there any comments from any of the adjacent neighbors on this at all that were reported? I didn't see anything here.
We did not receive any written comments, nor did I receive any phone calls with questions regarding this.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any reason not to consider the 2 other pieces of property, other than this applicant doesn't own them? But I mean, in the future, as we look at zoning in the district?
I don't see why we couldn't consider that as a separate action, separate from this.
Okay. Mr. Baker, are you on the line?
Good evening, Commissioners. Chris Baker with Manhart Consulting here on behalf of the applicant. I think Heather did a great job kind of summarizing this. It really is an instance where the zoning was modified to allow for a particular use, and unfortunately that use has ceased to operate. And really all we're asking is that it be reverted back to the original zoning to allow for compatibility with surrounding properties. So with that, we have read the staff report and we agree with staff's recommendation. We're here for any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions for the applicant? All right, let's bring it back and see if we can do this one. Is there any further discussion? Is there a motion? Commissioner Preston?
Half afraid. Okay, I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of the zoning map amendment ZA-2020-009 as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second? Commissioner Estwine seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. All right. Director's report, Mr. Plummel.
Okay, going to sneak up on this thing this time, okay? All right. Just a couple items for you tonight. Thanks for, this is our early meeting in the month. We adjusted for the holidays, so our deadline for the next planning commission meeting hasn't come yet. If they're due this week, so we'll have, we're not sure of all the applications we're going to get for January. Next meeting is, I have that. I wrote it down here somewhere, but it's the last Wednesday in January. Just to catch you up on things that are going to or have gone to the Board of Supervisors this month. On the December 3rd, the Board of Supervisors had discussion regarding Title 18, 1805, and Division 1 of the Development Standards. That's the land use and site design sections of it, including guest buildings. And they had a pretty lengthy discussion on things and not a lot of changes. I think good discussion. The one particular thing I'll note at this time is regarding guest buildings and kind of the issue of whether or not they should be rented as accessory dwelling units or not. And there were 4 members present in the discussion, and their conclusion was 2 of them are for it, 2 were against, and kind of leaves it still up in the air. And I noted that that's not the board that's going to make the decision anyway. It's going to be the next board. So I think the approach is going to be to include changes or some sort of discussion in that section of code as it goes forward for further public review that shows the change to eliminate the restriction so that we can have discussion on it. Just with my thought being, the public doesn't have any idea you're discussing changing anything if it's not represented in the changes. So I'll continue to show that change in there, and we'll continue to have conversations. And in fact, it's not this total commission probably that will make that decision either. The Hope Tingle's position is up at the end of this year, and the Board of Supervisors will be filling that position, as well as former Commissioner Doerr's position at their first meeting in January. So we should have a full commission again, full 7 members by the meeting in January. And regarding Title 18 also, I'll follow up on that. I know I discussed maybe having the next workshop towards the end of January, early February, and kind of looking where we are in the process. I discussed this with the DA's office last week, and the board actually had quite a bit of discussion about that and the timing of that. And their goal is to have either to start adopting sections of it that we've discussed so far to start implementing these things, or have the entire Title 18 re-adopted by the end of 2021. I think the DA's office is leaning towards the latter, is getting the whole thing done all at once by the end of next year. We're still kind of working on that and trying to figure out formatting so that to start to get anything that comes out into the new format, so you're kind of looking at it in the new format and layout and organization. We're also to the point where kind of the next division, the next development standard chapter in line is the sign code. The sign code is going to involve a total rewrite of the sign code. It's not even, I don't even want to bring it for discussion in the format it is now, based on Supreme Court decisions and litigation on content neutral sign codes. It's going to look completely different. I think we're going to, try to write it so that existing signs are pretty much stay the same for the standard business, but it's going to have to be totally rewritten with the DA's office to kind of bring it into compliance with the latest in legal requirements for First Amendment sign issues. So more to come and updates at the next meeting, and we'll try to get information out to you as to what the plan is to continue with Title 18. But it's actually pretty aggressive, I think, to get the whole thing adopted by next year with a total rewrite and organization of it with the DA's office. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any comments from the commission? Yes.
I would like to take a minute to thank Lee and Hope and Heather and Tamar for all of the help. It's been an interesting educational experience. I would also like to thank Lucia Maloney, Dan Stuckey, Stephen Potay, and Eddie Coglieri over at Public Works for always being responsive whenever I call with questions about water usage, traffic studies, the gamut of questions that I typically ask. But this has, like I said, been an interesting educational voyage, and I've appreciated all of you and the comments that you've made, and the insight that you bring to this body, and I have reapplied. I am not illusional nor delusional in thinking that I will be granted a second term, but you never know. 2020 being what it is, 2021 might be different. But anyway, I do thank you very much for everything and all of the hard work that you've done and that you're going to do in the future. So good luck.
And Hope, we thank you for your perspective. Okay. Any other comments?
Yes, just a question for
Mr. Perry.
Director Plemmel. So we're going, starting in January, we go back to the fourth Wednesday of each month for planning commission meetings?
The last Wednesday,
The last Wednesday of each month,
which
okay.
sometimes is the fifth Wednesday occasionally.
Sometimes it's the fifth. And for the workshops, do you have a general sequence for that too, so I can get them on my calendar and not miss one like I did last month?
We'll send out appointments. Yeah, we'll look at the availability of the room, and I know it's typically been the week following your planning commission meeting, so.
Week following. Okay.
That's what we were doing there pretty consistently before the holidays here in the last couple months. So we'll try to keep that schedule, but checking the availability of the room.
Thank you.
Okay. The public is invited at this time to comment on and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of the Planning Commission, including any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. Is there any public comment?
There is no final public comment, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Mr. Perry. Second. All in favor, say aye. Thank you all very much.